So I'm going to speak very slowly, and I hope that it's not perceived as some kind of affectation for the sake of this subject matter. But to be honest, this is who I am oftentimes, and the reason why I tend to not speak this way, even just going outside in the normal world, is because everyone has just boatloads of impatience. We tend to speak like this: we got to get it out real fast. We got to get it out real fast. And I can do that. But it can be very exhausting if you're not naturally in that place. So just want to point that out. I'm going to be at a particular pace because I want to be very precise with my language. We all have different kinds of energy. You've seen what it's like, or you felt what it's like to feel hate run through you, to feel sex run through you, to feel love run through you, to feel violence run through you. But there's also an energy I feel that's not talked about in this kind of way, and that's spiritual energy. I've had the good fortune these past days to live basically like a monk. I've learned a lot about the contents of my mind, about what experiences were available to me as a human being. And I learned that spiritual energy, and this is my view, let's call it my opinion. This is my strong opinion. It would seem that spiritual energy is available to us, to every human, I would imagine, or to most. Just like sexual energy, just like violent energy. But I wonder, because just like, for instance, there are people who are asexual. And if you don't know what that is, that's people who don't feel any kind of sexual inclination at all towards men or women. So I don't know the details of that, but that definitely exists. So I don't know. We don't like to think that certain things are closed off to us, or that certain things are harder to grab for us than others. But that's also quite possible. But I find that I definitely have a disposition towards being sensitive to what I'm going to call spiritual energy. And the reason why we don't view it as its own isolated form, in my view, is because usually spiritual energy is only spoken about in the context of some kind of religion. And what I'm suggesting is that spiritual energy can be had without the use of any religious vehicle. And what it feels like, it's difficult to see where it goes with it. How do I define spiritual energy, for one? Because these are vague words. I'm talking about speaking precisely, but I'm being vague. The thing is, it's like, so how do you describe something like violent energy? When an MMA fighter gets into the ring and he's ready to beat the snot out of the dude in front of him, how do you describe what's going on except to say that and obviously it's not simply violent energy, it's a competitive kind of element there. It's a strong competitive element there, but still violence is there. And how do you define that? It's a feeling. It's a feeling. You're motivated to do X, Y, and Z. That's why I'm speaking this way, because I don't know how to really get any more specific than that. If I could tell you what love feels like, but it's a whole nother thing to feel love. So when it comes to spiritual energy, it feels like, for one, a door is closed towards hatred. It feels like I can't even feel hatred. It feels like I feel one with everybody. Anyone I talk to, their presence seems to be much more profound than it did before. It feels like I have not one desire for anything, that I'm totally fine right here, right now. It feels like I'm vibrating on a different frequency, as they say. You know, that's one of I'll tell you, before I meditated deeply and met certain other conditions to where I feel it made me super sensitive to what I'm calling spiritual energy. When people were talking about vibrating on different frequencies and all that, I didn't know what to think of it. To be honest, I do understand the concept of a vibe. We get that. When we talk about energy and vibes, we all kind of get it. Like, I don't like the vibe over here, you know, and you know what that means. But again, it's hard to put your finger on it and to really give you the ingredients as to what that is. But a vibe is a vibe, and I tell you, when spiritual energy feels as though it's running through me, it feels as if I'm on a different kind of frequency. It's in the mode that I'm in, the place that I'm in, is in stark contrast to where I'm at on a daily basis when that energy is not there. I feel like a dramatically different human being. And so the way that it would seem that I get there, that I ever got there, it seems that conditions need to be met, though. That's the thing. I don't know how anybody, I wonder about the average person experiencing the spiritual energy, or experiencing it as easily. Not as easily. Experiencing it at all. I know I'll speak only for myself. I can't imagine experiencing what I'm talking about, where I had to just be eating whatever the hell I wanted to eat, where I had to be talking however I wanted to talk, thinking nonsense. I think whatever I want to think, but just thinking about nonsense, looking at nonsense, basically digest. You know what it is? I can't imagine experiencing spiritual energy, and I never have, when I was just munching on junk food with my mouth, eyes, and ears. Let's put it like that. We digest things through our ears, our eyes, and our mouth. And if it's all junk coming in, I don't know how you can feel any different than the junk which influences your chemistry. And so I've noticed that, especially when I fast, and I never fast because of some literature I read, and I'm not knocking anyone who fasts because they heard it's a good idea. What I'm saying is, and I'm just speaking my truth here, sometimes my body just tells me I don't want to eat, and I oblige it because I feel a little sensation in my stomach, but I can tell that it's not what I call true hunger. I could tell that if I were to eat, it would be out of habit. It would be just something to do. But what I do is I might drink something like some good quality green tea. And I find that fasting in conjunction with green tea, in conjunction with doing yoga, for instance, it seems that blood flow and fasting and caffeine minus sugar have something to do with this too. Now, we don't like talking about this aspect because it takes some of the magic out of it. Because now I'm speaking about it in this chemical way. But to be honest, and this is why I'm calling it my spirituality. Listen, I think it's an arrogant thing for us humans to think that we are so awesome that we can just eat whatever, do whatever, get no sleep, talk however we want, do whatever we want to do. The things that over here is optimization, and optimization is eating the healthy stuff, getting your sleep, getting your exercise, meditating, having vulnerable conversations, being honest, and all that good stuff. There's the wholesomeness. That's the optimization. And then over here, you have doing whatever the hell you want to do, and just whenever you want. It's an arrogant thing, I feel, that we think being over here should still get us to a place of contentment, a place of balance, just because we think spiritual to be that strong that it will penetrate through our shittiness. I doubt that strongly. I don't doubt that somebody can have a spiritual experience. I think it's very unlikely. Very, very, very unlikely. And to think that food doesn't matter, I feel is one of the greatest ignorances that we as this first world civilization have. We just presume that nourishment doesn't mean anything, especially because all we care about is weight. And you can eat junk and still be skinny. Therefore, I'm healthy. Therefore, I don't need nutrients. But anyway, I feel like an overall healthy lifestyle increases the likelihood, increases your sensitivity. Healthiness increases your sensitivity to the spiritual energy. That's what I feel about that part. And so, especially when I'm fasting, especially when I spent the day in silence, again, this is something that is a luxury. I can't deny that. Being able to spend the entire day in pure silence is one of the greatest treasures that I've ever found. It's a beautiful thing, but it's also hard as hell, because you're being pulled north, south, east, and west. My mind definitely says, hey, do this, go on YouTube, eat this, eat that, eat some cookies, watch this, watch that, do this, do that. And I'm like, no, sit still, mother effer. And I say it kindly. I'm kindly enforce that to myself. I'm not going to indulge this nonsense. We're gonna sit here and you have no other option. So the other condition is that kind of stillness, that slowness. And we find the stillness and slowness, as I just said about my own self, we find it to be excruciating. We find it to be boring. And even boredom is a necessary nutrient in all this. Being able to coexist with boredom. So, moving away from all the conditions, when all these conditions are met, and when I do meet them, and when I surrender to the now, it would seem that spiritual energy begins to kick in. You see, when I clear my mind, because when I focus on my breathing, and only my breathing, and it helps, my brother's breathing exercises help that a lot. It would seem that another huge part of this spiritual energy is a sensitivity to your breath. And in my experience, and I feel like I'm just way too fortunate to have Eric reveal all these breathing exercises to me. I would never, I don't know how I ever would have come across them, but certain breathing exercises they inherently create a sensitivity to your breath. And when you become aware of your breath, when attentive energy is dedicated to your breath, something kind of magical happens. And this is something magical happens amongst all the things I was talking about, amongst sitting in the silence, amongst the green tea running through you and all that, and you fasting, and you just other factors, you being honest, you being still. This energy begins to flow through you, and you begin to feel like a different person. You begin to not want anything, and you begin to feel just this kind of utter contentment, and it's a kind of love. And I say it's a kind of love because it does differ to me a little bit from the average kind of love. And I'm not saying it's the grandest love. I'm not saying it's the only kind of love to experience. That's my other thing. I don't think that spiritual energy is so mighty that it trumps feeling any other kind of way. I don't think that I'm not necessarily motivated to go and live in a mountain and only ever channel that energy. That'd be akin. No, okay, I'm not going to use that example. Never mind. But that's not the motivation here. But I do want access to this energy, just like I appreciate sexual energy, just like I appreciate comedic energy. I think we should strive to have spiritual energy as something that's on the menu of options for us as human beings, that something that we take part in many of time, but to seek it and only it, I don't think is. I wonder about that. But maybe some people, that's what they need, though. Some people, maybe that is their medicine. Maybe they only need that spiritual energy. I've gotten away from myself a little bit. 1 second. So you feel transcendent. You feel transcendent. And I've been trying to, if you're deep enough in this video, perhaps you are patient enough and interested enough to hear what I have to say about this part. I feel like this experience is available to us no matter what religion you subscribe to. I don't think you need a religion, is my point. I feel that it's something that resides in us humans. Oh, I know what else I want to say. I apologize. But I'm going to tell you with this first. I feel that it is something that's available in most of us humans. And if you're born in that Muslim household and you have a disposition to be sensitive to the spiritual energy, you're going to presume that it is Allah that is bringing this out in you, that's facilitating it. If you're born in the Hindu religion, perhaps it's going to be, I don't want to be insulting Shiva. I know they have many Hindu gods. You're going to probably presume that it's one of these gods that's touching you, that's facilitating it. And then Christian God. My feeling, my theory, is that the spiritual energy will be there no matter what you subscribe to. It has nothing to do with a third party. I feel like it starts in us, and I feel like it ends in us. That's my theory. I know that in the Enlightenment period in this country, there was, I forgot what it's called, I know there was a particular woman who was at the head of this movement. And she was talking about the God within us. And she was considered a kind of a heretic for that. But I do believe that there is a quote unquote God within us. I feel, let me say this. In the past, when people would talk about God spoke to them, I remember a gentleman, I spoke about him in one of my videos a long time ago. I remember him saying how one time God told him to get up, for instance. I forgot the context. I guess he was being some kind of lazy or something, and God told him to get up. And then I heard this other girl once in her speech, she was talking about something, and she mentioned how God told her that she needs to go to this other city. And then there's other examples of that where people say, God told me to do this, God told me to do that. I believe them. But I don't believe that it was God. I believe that it was the innermost being. The innermost being, I'm not saying it's an actual person. I am not claiming that there's absolutely another not even a human being, obviously. I am not claiming that there's another person inside of us, necessarily. I'm not saying that. I don't know that. What I'm saying is that when I meditate, or when I sit in silence, when all the noise is gone, when all the noise is cleared away, and I'm in conversation with myself. And if I was a religious man, it'd be in conversation with God. But it's in conversation with my own self, with the recesses of my mind, or with what's behind the curtain of my consciousness. When I'm in conversation with myself, I call it the voiceless voice. If I ask myself, what should I do next? And then an answer comes back. You should go read. You should take a shower. You should continue on this path. You should stop doing this. It comes back as clear as day, but it's not, I call it a voiceless voice because it doesn't respond. Let's call it the God within. It doesn't respond as the way that I'm talking now. I merely interpret it. I apply the words to the feeling, it would seem. I don't know, I can't claim that it's absolutely a second voice. I feel like it is a declaration that I am adding a voice to. And I feel like, though, this voiceless voice, as I call it, and I apologize if this is confusing. This is just the way I perceive it. This is just my subjective experience. But I do feel like the voiceless voice has major credibility. I'm not saying that it's, what do you call it, omniscient. I'm not saying that it's omniscient. I'm saying that I feel it knows with much more certainty than my conscious self tends to give credit to. Than my conscious self tends to know. Because me who's speaking now, I at times am influenced by all other kinds of... It's hard to know what's influencing you. How about that? It's hard to know until you sit in silence and the fog continues to clear. You continue to non-judgmentally just observe the ins and outs of what's happening in your mind and just notice stuff arise. Notice this random thought, oh, that movie was cool, and then the song play, meow 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 meow, and it all just evaporates. It keeps all these little thoughts keep going, coming, evaporating, and then eventually it's just nothing. But then that's when the voiceless voice tends to be its loudest. That's when thoughts tend to be their loudest, in my experience. And the voiceless voice, my theory on that is that we're processing things. So we process things consciously and we process things unconsciously. I feel like there's a truth. There's, if we're ever uncertain about something, to get in contact with the voiceless voice is the best way to figure out what our next move should be. And this is often called God. When this one girl said that God told her to move, that she needs to move to this other area, and she took that to be credible, my feeling is that she knew that, but her conscious self doubted whether or not she needed to do it. But the other aspect of herself, that innermost being, cried out for it as well, and so that verified it. Or even if she didn't believe that is what she needed to do consciously, our innermost being tends to know. I also call it the knower. I'm not saying that it's always right. I feel like some people can have a perverse knower, because I feel like also spiritual energy is available in a Darth Vader-ish kind of sense. I was talking to my friend, and we were talking about this, and he brought the Aztecs, for instance, and I was talking about, like, yeah, man, because when they would perform their rituals, and heads would be beheaded, blood would be pouring down, and people would be raving over it. Or even when people used to burn witches and stuff in the Salem witch trials and whatnot, and the sacrifices made for humans used to be sacrificed in all the cultures, not just Native American, but in that case, it's Aztecs in Mexico. But I feel like it could be perverse as well. I feel like spiritual energy is even available to you, even if you got it all messed up. I feel like somebody could be convinced that sacrificing human beings, and as in the past they were convinced that sacrificing these humans pleased God or pleased the gods. And I feel like that could activate spiritual energy. I don't think that, as a movie would like us to believe and whatnot, that certain things are available only to the purest of heart. I feel like the best kind of spiritual energy is probably available to the purest of heart. Just like the best kind of love is probably available to the purest of heart. But just to use an example that's always used, just to use him as a person, he's always used. Hitler, for example. I'm sure Hitler loved many people. And I'm sure many Nazis loved their children and loved their wives. I don't think that, acknowledging that how, do I need to say that they were monsters? Obviously they were monsters, but my point is that a monster can also feel love. And I'm not saying that makes him good. I'm just saying that I don't think good people have the monopoly on spiritual energy, Good people have the monopoly on love. Good people have the monopoly on anything. But putting that aside, I do think that there's a transcendent feeling, that there's a transcendent mode. When spiritual energy flows through me, it all just feels okay. And hatred doesn't make any sense. Kindness and compassion makes all the sense in the world. And I think it's a real thing, is my point. But I think it requires certain kinds of stereotypical behaviors, stereotypical kind of ritualistic things. Okay. I don't know if this was helpful or not. Okay, I'll leave it here. I feel like I should say more. I feel like there's more that needs to be said, but I don't quite know. So, alright, y'all.